Menage Shifter Romance, dominated by two dragons. Written by Cynthia Mendoza. Narrated by Melissa Barr.
Chapter 1. Last Will and Testament.
Hello, boys.
Mr. Numeroff looked strained and tired as he reached out to take Nicholas and Michael's hands in turn. He held each for a few beats, staring into the young men's identical green eyes in that meaningful but almost uncomfortable way people tend to do when offering condolences to people who have suddenly lost their parent. The twins shook the attorney's hand without saying anything. There really wasn't much to say in this situation. They both sat down in brown leather chairs in front of Mr. Numeroff's massive dark wood desk and glanced around the office. It looked like something directly out of a law textbook, right down to the rows of law books on floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and the inexplicable globe that sat on a small table by the window, serving absolutely no purpose in the greater scheme of the office. They had been visiting that office since they were small children, crawling around under the desk and chairs, and flipping through the stiff pages of the books on the lowest shelves, as their father spoke in low tones to the attorney. Neither had ever known why they had such frequent visits to the lawyer's office, and as they got older, they began to find it strange that their father spent so much time in these muffled, intense conversations with the aging attorney. Now, Mr. Numeroff was staring at them from his chair behind his desk. The green leather monstrosity looked like a throne, the size of it completely out of proportion to the small man sitting in it, so it seemed to engulf him. His hand shook slightly as he folded them on top of the desk and continued to stare at the twins. They seemed to be locked in a standoff, each waiting for someone else to start the inevitable conversation. Michael noticed a slim case in the middle of the desk and pointed it out to the attorney.
"Is that it?"
he asked. Mr. Numeroff jumped slightly and looked down at the case as if he wasn't expecting it to be sitting there and instead had been planning on some sort of build-up to what was inside. He flattened one hand on the case and slid it back and forth across the surface of the desk a few times before saying anything.
"Yes. Your father made this a few years ago, just in case."
He trailed off, and Nicholas stepped in to pick up the conversation where his brother and the attorney had left off.
"In case he died?"
The attorney gave a deep sigh and nodded.
"In case he died before you boys turned 25. Why did it matter to him when he died? Did it really make that much of a difference? We're all that's left of the family. It's not like he could change what he left us if he died some other time."
Michael was shocked at the anger behind his twin's words and slid his eyes over to look at him. Nicholas was shifting in his chair, either trying to get comfortable or fighting to force emotions back down where he could control them more easily. One of his hands gripped the arm of the chair so hard, his knuckles were whitened and the leather had deep indentations.
"Actually, it did matter,"
Mr. Numeroff said, sounding a little stronger now that there was more direction in the conversation.
"Your father planned this out very carefully, depending on how old you were when he died, because of what he needed to tell you." "I don't understand," Michael said, before Nicholas could speak again. "What did he need to tell us that he couldn't say in person, but had to put on some message for after he died?" "How much do you know about your family history?" the attorney asked, running his finger along the edge of the case on the desk. "Not much," Michael said. "Dad wasn't exactly good at sharing that kind of information with us," Nicholas added. "He would only ever tell us that there was something special about our family that we would learn about when we were old enough to understand." Mr. Numeroff nodded and picked up the case, popping it open in his hand and pulling out a disc. He slipped the disc into the optical drive on the side of his laptop and turned the computer to face the boys. When Ethan's face filled the screen, both twins leaned forward slightly. It had only been a few weeks since their father had died, and it was strange to see him there, especially with a face that lacked the weathering and lines that the last few years had put on it. Ethan was sitting behind the same desk where the computer sat now, his larger frame taking up much more of the green leather chair than the attorney's did. The image of him was leaned forward against the desk in the same position as the boys, and for a moment, both twins felt like they could reach out and touch him. They looked so much like him, especially now that they were adults. And even though the last years of his life had pushed him into a dark place, where his relationship with his sons had disintegrated, they could see on that screen the father they remembered from when they were young. There were several seconds of silence before Ethan
Sample complete. Ready to continue?